Welcome to One Mind Brainwaves, a weekly forum where we discuss the science surrounding brain health. I'm Laurie Hernandez, guest hosting for Brandon Staglin this week. Today's topic is the animal-human connection. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from two amazing people who educate the public about the importance and the many benefits of the human-animal bond in today's world. We'll also hear a new interpretation of an old folk song about the simplest of pleasures, loving your dog. But first, let me tell you about my own connection to animals. I have two dogs. They're both golden doodles, both minis. And my little one, Honey, I just love her to pieces. She's extremely crazy. She is so tiny, and I have had so many wonderful and crazy memories with her. And we also have my other dog, Kiki. She is actually a therapy dog. My sister is a therapist. She has her own private practice, and Kiki gets to come to work with her and make sure that everybody's feeling safe and comfortable. And so I love these two dogs to pieces. They definitely make the world a better place. Joining us now, all the way from Wales, an artist whose current album has been described by BBC Radio as utterly transfixing. Singer, songwriter, and harpist Georgia Ruth, along with her husband, Iwan, are here. So welcome, Georgia and Iwan. Welcome.
Hi, Laurie. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good. We're currently under our second proper lockdown, so it's just for 2 weeks this time. So like a smaller one, but we're doing okay. Yeah, we're okay.
Oh, okay. Oh my goodness. This year is just crazy. It's not every week that we have a harpist on Brainwaves. I know you started playing at a very young age. What drew you to the harp, a meditational instrument, if there ever was one? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think I didn't intend to play it. I remember in school we were about 7 and they wanted us to play instruments, and I had the clarinet in my head. I don't know why, I just really wanted to play the clarinet. And I told the teacher, please can I play clarinet? And she said, oh, sorry, there are no more spaces left. All the people with different surnames to you already took them, but you could play the harp. And I kind of went, yeah, not really thinking about this huge life choice that I was making at the time. Lifestyle choice, definitely.
You were bottom of the list, weren't you? Because you're Williams.
Yeah, I'm Williams, so I was right down the register. And they needed someone for the harp, so I volunteered, and I'm still playing. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And you know, to you, and how did you start guitar? Because I've been playing guitar for like a couple years now, and I was wondering just where you fell in love with it and if you play any other instruments.
I had piano lessons when I was very young, and then I gave that up, and I didn't learn guitar until I was about 15 probably. And I'm self-taught really, actually, and I've been learning a lot recently over YouTube. That's become a fantastic resource. That's what I'm learning more at the moment than I ever have before, because I became quite complacent, I suppose. But I just taught myself, once you can strum along to a few songs that you like, that gets the ball rolling. And that's how I started. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed, especially when I first started out, that just by playing all my favorite songs over and over again, even that was really helpful to get used to the rhythm and everything. So I feel that YouTube is wonderful. There are so many apps out there too that are just created so that way we can learn. And as crazy as 2020 is, I think it's been a pretty good music year. So
definitely. I think a lot of people are discovering that it's a good time to learn something they always wanted to learn. And I guess music is one of those things, isn't it? You just sort of go to it because it does have that comfort quality. So I suppose that's one positive, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So released during this chaotic pandemic year, your new album, My, is kind of a meditation on finding hope and renewal, an antidote to 2020, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't intend it to come out under these circumstances, but very bizarrely, it's felt kind of been this slight sort of destined feel about it, because I wrote it when I just had my first child, and your world gets very small. I remember feeling like that was sort of like another kind of bubble, and you just, everything is new. your mind is, dealing with all these new changes. So actually, the conditions that I wrote the album in was strangely similar to how the start of the pandemic felt. So when the album came out, the things that were coming through when people were listening, they were saying, oh, I've got some comfort from this song. And I thought, oh, yeah, because I wrote it to have comfort for myself, So it all it came together in this weird way. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. The folk song Old Blue is one of the tracks on your 2013 debut album, Week of Pines, an album about joyfulness and about coming home, which I love so very much. Anything that has to do with home just absolutely melts me. How did you discover this song and how did it fit in with these themes?
I think I heard this song when I was very young. My parents listened to a lot of American music, so we always had a lot of brilliant records playing at home when I was growing up. And one of the voices was Joan Baez, and her version of this song, I remember listening to it when I was very little and kind of connecting to it. And I'd always loved dogs, so I think that was kind of my emotional way in. And much later, we lost a family dog, and I'd never realised how great that loss could feel, So this song was kind of very therapeutic for me. And actually, when we were practicing earlier, because we haven't played it for a long time, I felt those emotions coming up again, So music is strange like that. It kind of, it helps you, but it holds those emotions there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got the power to take you back to a certain moment in time, I suppose, and the associations that you give to sounds remain forever in a way, don't they?
They do.
Yeah, there's something about tuning in with senses. I know there was one time where I was having like a really stressful workout, and next thing I knew, I was in, a grocery store buying candles, and I was like, oh, I guess that's like a way to tune into my senses. And I know music is one of those things also that's like, if you have like the right chord, the right melody, the right words, something about that just literally, it feels like home. It feels like a huge heart hug. So I'm going to go ahead and cue you guys up to go ahead and perform Old Blue, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, of course. Right. I hope we're in tune. We'll find out.
How many strings have we got? 50.
Okay, that's sounding good. Okay. His name was Blue. Had a dog and his name was Blue. shook the ground in my backyard, digging the grave with a silver spade. Oh, I laid him down with links of chain, and on every link I did call his name. And I went, "Here, blue, oh, you're a good dog, you. Come on, blue. Oh, I'm coming there. I'm coming there too. I'll be coming there for you. I'm coming there for you. I'm coming
Oh my goodness. Holy moly, you two, that was so beautiful. Like, just thank you for so much for sharing that gift with me and for all of our viewers and listeners. I have a feeling that you all got us to connect a little better this morning. I mean, that was just wonderful. So, Georgia and Ewan, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks, Laurie. It's been a pleasure. It's been great.
That was awesome. With me now to discuss the research behind the human-animal bond and the powerful ways it can transform lives, Steven Feldman is the executive director of the Human-Animal Bond Research Institute. Mary Cortani is a U.S. Army veteran and the founder and executive director of Operation Freedom Paws, which matches shelter dogs with veterans and others with disabilities to help meet their specific psychological and physical challenges. Steve and Mary, welcome to Brainwaves.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for joining me today. Viewers, don't forget you can post questions for our guests in the comments section of this webcast at any time you please. So Steve, let me start with you. Thanks so much for coming on. Why is the relationship between humans and animals so important to the mental wellness of people?
Well, it is important. And one of the reasons it's important is because it's built into our brains. For thousands of years, we have actually co-evolved with dogs and cats and horses. They've been part of our lives for so long that we've actually become hardwired to connect with other animals. And it produces amazing benefits both for us and for them.
I love that so much. I've always been so curious as to why we're so connected with dogs. So that's interesting. Your organization, HABRI, is a leader in researching and studying the human-animal relationship. What does the science tell us about the benefits to both people and animals?
Well, because it is so beneficial to us, first of all, I like to think of it this way. You probably ate your fruits and vegetables today because eating your fruits and vegetables is part of being a healthy person, right? And you probably worked out or took a walk because getting your exercise is part of being a healthy person. And what I like to tell people is we now have enough science, enough research to show that having animals in our lives, that having our pets with us is also part of being a healthy person. And there are a number of ways. Heart health, for example, which is important to all of us. In 2013, the American Heart Association actually put out a scientific statement on the heart health benefits of having pets in our lives. Mental health, certainly, especially now during the pandemic, our pets are a bright spot. They're supporting our mental health, but there's good scientific studies to show that pets not only improve our mental health, but they're absolutely instrumental in the long-term management of mental health conditions. So, physical health, mental health, and then there's all kinds of other studies benefits for kids and their education, benefits for children with autism. And of course, I know you're going to get into this with Mary, the benefits for our veterans.
It's really interesting you say that, especially in connection to heart health, because my dad has diabetes, my mom has heart disease, and they are currently with my little doggo Honey, which they will definitely claim as their own. But since Honey's come in, my dad, who, he loves doing like the occasional yard work and moving around when we're all involved. But with Honey, she has so much energy that in order to make sure that she's calm for the rest of the day, they have to go on walks every morning. And so not only is it beneficial to her, it's beneficial to him because he gets to move. My mom gets to come along, and it's definitely been a really solid connection that all three of them have. And it's been wonderful to watch. So
that's great. And there's even some studies that show that as we're all social distancing, we're spending more time with our pets, and going for those walks is becoming even more important in our lives.
It's so special. And you talk about something called the pet effect. What is that?
Well, okay. So we're talking about the human brain, right? And so what is the pet effect? Well, some very important research was done to show that when you're interacting with these animals, it's affecting your brain chemistry, your endorphins, dopamine, oxytocin, the good brain chemicals are rising. And cortisol, which is the stress hormone, the bad stuff, is actually dropping. So there are actual changes, beneficial changes that are happening in your brain chemistry just from interacting with an animal. And the good news is, for the animals, the same thing is happening when you're petting your dog, you're feeling it, and the same measurements are happening in their brain. Their stress hormones are dropping, and their good brain chemicals are rising as well. So it's mutually beneficial.
Oh, it's a win-win for all parties. My whole heart. Do the benefits extend to, I guess, beyond like cats and dogs? Like, what about birds and gerbils and lizards and whatnot?
Well, it's interesting because there was a really large study that we helped fund on pets in the classroom. So that's a lot of these small animals that you're talking about. And what it showed was that kids with pets in the classroom actually had improved behavior, more positive behavior, less negative behaviors, and improved academic performance just from having these smaller animals in the classroom. There's been studies to show that birds can help alleviate loneliness, pet birds. And there's one of my favorite studies shows that fish keeping can actually improve patients with Alzheimer's. Great study that showed that patients with Alzheimer's who ate their meals in a room with a fish tank actually took in more natural nutrition, had more positive social interaction just from having fish around. So the human-animal bond goes across all species.
Yeah,
Steve,
wow. Sorry about that.
No, I hope you don't mind me interjecting, but Steve, I had a question for you.
Sure.
Has there been research done on the stress relief of students prior to taking a test or having a dog in the classroom while tests are being conducted?
During tests, I'm not so sure, but there are increasingly therapy animals being brought onto college campuses, especially during exam weeks, so that the students can enjoy the stress relief of having these animals. And the really neat thing about those studies is it shows that a relatively short interaction, even 5 or 10 minutes, petting a therapy dog produces stress relief for the rest of the day. So a small dose of dog has a big effect.
Yeah, we've seen that because in addition to what we do as service dogs, we have customers who we've trained to have therapy dogs, and they're going to the colleges and universities and into the vet centers and the student centers and during exam week. And what we're seeing unofficially without the research is that they're doing much better on their exams than if the dog had not been there and they had not interacted.
That's great. That's great. I would expect to see that. So that's so wonderful to hear the validation of that.
That's so interesting. And Steve, even earlier you had mentioned about Alzheimer's. My grandmother actually had Alzheimer's, and I grew up with like a fish tank in the house. And I've always been so curious as to why my dad's gravitated to eating in the same room as the fish tank almost every night growing up. Like, it's something that he always does and he still does to this day. So it's pretty awesome to hear you say that. Mary, all of these mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, can be debilitating afflictions for our nation's veterans. So Operation Freedom Paws, how does it work?
Well, Operation Freedom Paws goes around. We have 30 things that we evaluate rescue dogs on. We don't breed. We're not a traditional service dog organization. We go to rescues and to shelters. We place the dogs through the evaluation process, because not every dog can be a service dog. They can make a great pet, but they don't necessarily have the drive or the will to be a service dog. And if they meet our criteria, then we will pull them, and we interview our clients to make sure that they're going to be able to work with a service dog and benefit from the use of a service dog. The human canine bond, I'm not a clinician, I'm not a researcher, a doctor, any of those things. I've just got 45 years of working with dogs in different capacities, from working dogs to search and rescue to my own pets. And then, 11 years of doing Operation Freedom Paws. And what I've seen is that we can have this amazing relationship that can go so much deeper when we actually work with our dogs. To Steve's point, pets will enrich our lives in so many ways. They definitely change our chemistry. I think anyone that has a pet, when they come home, they could have had a rough day, but they walk through the door and the dog's there greeting them, right? So the way it works is at Operation Freedom Paws is we take something as simple as that, but we have the dog that has the drive and the desire to do the work and make life better for the human. And we pair them together. Our program goes for a minimum of 48 weeks because it's the old Chinese proverb. If I give you a fish, you'll eat for a day. If I teach you to fish, you'll eat for a lifetime. And so we're teaching them a lot of different things, and we're working on the human, because you got to admit the dog is the easy part.
Wow. Even though it's work, it still seems kind of like working with animals can be such a joy, and they all have their own personalities. They all have their own ways of doing things. And I feel like singling that out can be a really interesting process. Now, you're a master canine instructor. You train dogs in the military. So tell us about your own relationship with animals and how Operation Freedom Paws was born.
Oh my goodness. I was the kid that brought home every stray. If it was the wild bird that had a broken wing, I was bringing it home. I think our local veterinary hospital got tired of seeing me because I was always walking down with some animal. But I grew up with dogs and horses and fish and cats, you name it. It was in my life. I got out of high school, went into the military, learned to train dogs. I became one of the first female canine handlers and instructors. And the working dog world is very different than having a pet, but I was intrigued by it because I had a neighbor who was blind and had a guide dog. So, that takes us up through today. I didn't retire out. I spent 9 years in. I went into high tech, and then I had to reinvent myself one more time, which is something that every veteran goes through when they get out of the service, whether they retire or whether they just end their service and come back into civilian life. And that process is a very tough process. The military builds you up into being the best soldier, airman, corpsman, Marine that you can be, and your world is black and white. But when you're in the non-veteran world or the non-military world, the gray that we experience every day in life with how to navigate certain things, it becomes very difficult. So there's this transition, and the military doesn't really teach us how to transition. So, and we'll go through transitions multiple times in our life. We all resist change, right? So in 2010, I had been running a dog training business for a few years because I had gone through another tradition, and I'm older. Being an executive in corporate America, it's hard to find another job when you're older and you're a female. And so I decided I'd start my own dog training business. When a Marine called in 2010, and if you have ever spoken to someone who is suicidal, even on the phone, you can tell. And this particular Marine had been on a waiting list for a traditional service dog organization for many years, like 2 to 3 years, as a matter of fact. And he was kind of losing hope. And so he was going to try one last time to find a trainer to work with him to train a service dog for him. And it was interesting because as we were talking, he had informed me that he had talked to a bunch of trainers, and they said anything from $10,000 to $30,000. And he didn't have that kind of money. He was fighting to get his benefits and fighting to hang on to everyday life. So we talked, and, I made him a promise because, I'd trained search and rescue dogs, narcotics, explosive detection dogs, patrol dogs, all, pets, all kinds of stuff. But I hadn't really trained a service dog. And I said, if you're willing to go on this journey with me, then we'll do this together. And he said, how much? And I said, I'm not going to charge you anything. We're going to find you the answers. And I had to do a bunch of research because in 2010, I didn't really understand what post-traumatic stress was. I knew that our body is made up of a whole bunch of chemistry. I knew that the dog's nose is phenomenal, that a scent is a scent. I understood about mobility tasks and guide work. And so we went on this journey together, and that's what started Operation Freedom Paws. We became a nonprofit in 2011. And since then, I've learned all kinds of things.
Laurie, let me just jump in here and say, this is what it's all about. I mean, you should know that the Veterans Administration, the U.S. government, does not fund service dogs for veterans with post-traumatic stress. And one of the reasons they say that is because they say there's not enough scientific research. So we've gone out and done some of the most important work so far, funding scientific research that shows that what Mary does works. And we funded that at Purdue University with Dr. Maggie O'Hare. We did the preliminary study, and now NIH is doing a full clinical trial because we've got to get the science so that we can change the policy. Because every veteran who can benefit from this shouldn't have to be on a waiting list. They shouldn't have to lose hope. So we don't put paws on the ground like Mary does, but we want to do the science to show that what she does works so that we can get everyone the help that they need.
Wow, that is so important, especially for people who are putting their lives out on the front line, for the country. My mom was in the Army Reserve for 6 years. So to both of you in your own respective fields, thank you so much, because after going out and after fighting and being in fight or flight mode for so long, to have to come back and reconnect with yourself, I can't even imagine what that's like. And so to be able to support and to be able to give them the resources that they need, one of those things being service animals. Thank you for providing that for them. And thank you for providing scientific research so that way we can proceed forward in the future. Because it's mind blowing,
Well, thank you. I'd like to jump in and just reiterate what Steve said. And Steve, thank you for your organization funding the Purdue study. We're really excited to be part of another study that's being conducted at Johns Hopkins University with regards to specifically post-traumatic stress with veterans and the mental health side of things. And it's being conducted by Jeremy Ramirez, who is also a veteran himself, who truly understands the military culture. So this specific study is looking at the veteran prior to being matched with the service dog and it's an interview to get a baseline and a survey, and then it goes into multiple disciplines within the study. But he conducts additional studies throughout the course of them getting a dog. So he'll do more surveys and stuff. And we're really excited to see the results, because after having worked with 437 clients in 11 years, we see it, but the science needs to be there to back it. Because to Steve's point, the VA right now has been conducting a research project, at least for the 10 or 11 years that I know of, with no results yet. But for those of us that are out doing the hard work, we see it every day.
Wow. I mean, I think my next question really goes for both of you, but how does it improve vets' lives? Like, what does that therapeutic relationship look like for them?
Go ahead,
Steve.
Mary.
Okay. Well, trauma is trauma. And it's not just veterans that have served in combat that experience trauma. Folks who have been in an accident, a natural disaster, sexual trauma, whether it's military sexual trauma, rape, things that we don't want to talk about easily in today's society, can create trauma. And enough repeated trauma actually changes how the brain functions. And so the analogy that we like to use is something to explain this trauma, is something where, imagine yourself walking across a wet lawn and you want to get from one side to the other. And so you step and your footprint is there. And the next person does the same thing, but they see that your footprint is in the grass. So they step in that same footprint. And eventually the grass doesn't grow there, right? What happens in the brain is that trauma, it keeps following that same path. And as I said, I'm not a scientist or, a clinician, but we know that what we see is with that trauma, we have to somehow change the brain. One of the greatest gifts that a dog gives is to live in the moment. They want to please us. They want to make us happy. Just like when you walk through that door, when you come home, they're there to greet you. That tail is wagging, right? They want to know what you've been up to, how you're doing. They're excited to see you. So what do? You begin to communicate. With enough trauma, folks stop communicating. They stay locked inside of their minds. They start to isolate. They become hypervigilant. So we see that with our veterans. And in the military, we're taught to be vigilant. We're taught to be observant. So here you have trauma with something that you've been taught, which is now a habit. So it's much easier to stay home and to isolate than it is to go to the restaurant or to go to the store or do the things that we see naturally and that we do naturally without thinking about it. We joke about it, but I can tell a veteran in a restaurant simply by, or even our first responders, simply by where they're sitting, because their backs are always up to the wall and they have a visual line to every single door and know their way out. So we're changing the brain by using the dog.
So the scientific research backs that up. It shows an overall, when you have a service dog, overall reduction in post-traumatic stress symptom severity, better reintroduction into family life and normal life, even better presenteeism at work for veterans that are working. And this is important to know that even though a pet might provide some of the relief that a service dog does, service dogs are trained to help bring a veteran out into the world. And service dogs have the right to be out there in public spaces with our veterans because they may experience those traumatic symptoms in Walmart or in a restaurant. And that's why they have to have their service dogs with them. So we really have to educate people. Just because somebody doesn't have a visible disability doesn't mean that the service dog isn't completely necessary to be with them wherever they are.
Yeah, no, exactly, Steve. It's thank you for saying that, because not all wounds or disabilities are visible. And some people are familiar with diabetes, some with epilepsy, and those aren't visible, right? So whether it's military sexual trauma, post-traumatic stress, the list goes on, you can't see that. And we should never judge the book by the cover. And a service dog is very different than a therapy dog or a comfort companion pet, right? And with the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, it says that the person, based on a medical need, is afforded the right to go in public with their dog. It's not the dog that has the right, it's the person that has the right. And the difference between them is that pets and companions, they might have training, right? They might not have training. Therapy dogs, on the other hand, have a lot of training. They need to be well behaved in public. They need to be able to get along with other people and with other animals, and provide comfort or therapy to someone in need, whether it's, reading for kids, visiting a hospital, convalescent home, places like that. Service dogs, on the other hand, are allowed to go wherever the person is allowed to go, whether it's the grocery store, the restaurant, the movies, to the amusement park, wherever it is. But here's the difference. Service dogs are highly, highly trained. They have to be good around other animals, around other people. They have to learn to ignore the distractions that are out in the world and take care of their human. And what do I mean by take care of their human? They have to perform tasks, a minimum of 2. So what does that mean? It means a million and one things depending on what the disability is, because those tasks can be numerous. But first and foremost, it must mitigate a medical condition. And post-traumatic stress, even though it is a mental health issue, and I won't say disorder because I think it does a disservice to the trauma that the individual has experienced, can be triggered anywhere based on sight, sound, smell, touch, movement. And so the dog has to mitigate that to keep the flashback from occurring and having that person relive the trauma. Okay. In the case of epilepsy or diabetes, it alerts to the change in the blood sugar levels or the fact that the seizure is going to take place and get the person to a safe place. Well, just like with epilepsy and getting a person to a safe space, with post-traumatic stress or military sexual trauma, getting the person to a safe space is also a task for a service dog, helping them to navigate and find an exit, right? Being able to pick something up, because our veterans and our clients don't just have one physical or, one issue. They all can have multiple, and it could be physical, it could be psychological, it could be chemical. The things that our veterans are exposed to, we see multiple things every day. So again, the ADA is saying that the dog has to be trained in 2 tasks at least. And we take it from there. One of the very first things that we see when we start working with our clients and match them with the dog, our clients who have isolated and have not taken and had conversations, even with their own family, right? They could be in the same house, but yet they lock themselves in a room because they become overstimulated. The minute they start working with their dog and we're teaching them to communicate with the dog, and we have 3 things: command, praise, and correction. And they're all important elements in communication, right? So we teach them to communicate with the dog, and the next thing you know, they're having a conversation about the dog with family members. And then the next thing you know, they're having a conversation with a stranger because we got them out to the grocery store and somebody walks by and say, "Oh, wow, that's a really well-behaved dog. That's amazing. What does it do for you?" And so communication begins to change the brain because it was shut off for so long. But again, that may not appear to be a task, but it is.
Absolutely. I know there's a company called I Don't Mind that makes like t-shirts and stuff that says I don't mind. And the whole point is that when people wear these t-shirts, everybody's asking like, oh, what does that mean? And then it starts a conversation about mental health. It gets people to talk about it. So I just recognize the similarities between that. But with service animals, I mean, I wish there was more of a conversation that was talked about it publicly and more often, so that way people understood how important they are and how important they are to our vets and those who do have PTSD. So, Steve, these benefits to mental health extend to every stage of life, and also to those with more, also to those with other conditions like young children with autism spectrum disorder to older adults suffering from dementia. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, sure. So a lot of our studies we've funded have been focused on children with autism. And there's good studies to show that interaction with guinea pigs and rabbits, interaction with cats, and of course, interaction with dogs actually helps kids with autism become more social, improve their social skills, regulate their own behaviors. And the other interesting side effect is that the primary caregiver, often the mother or father for that child, also has less stress just by having animals present in a family where there's a child with autism. So, so that's one of the focal points of our research, looking at that. Horses too. I forgot to mention the horses. And then we have a real focus on healthy aging. We talked about getting out and moving. Although one of my favorite studies shows that people who've had a heart attack are more likely to be alive 1 year after that heart attack if they have a cat. So even a cat in your lap produces that therapeutic effect that we've been talking about. So, but healthy aging, one of the issues there, and one thing that I guess we're all experiencing now, is social isolation and loneliness. This is important for everybody, especially during the pandemic. Well, it turns out that pets, both directly and indirectly, help us alleviate social isolation and loneliness, both by providing constant companionship, but also helping us meet other people. When you're walking around your neighborhood, when you're out and about, it's the pets that actually help us find that point of connection. And there's good studies to show that whole communities are more close-knit, and are more higher functioning just by the presence of more pets in those communities. Because you meet the people, and then you do favors for each other, and you become friends, and then you have a close-knit community. So individuals and families and whole communities can benefit from the human-animal bond.
My whole heart. Reminder for those who are listening and watching, we are talking today about the human-animal connection with Mary Cortani, a U.S. Army veteran and the founder and executive director of Operation Freedom Paws, Steven Feldman, the executive director of the Human-Animal Bond Research Institute. Viewers, do not forget to post your questions and comments for our guests. Let us know how your pets, your animal companions, enrich your life. How are you helped by a service animal? What inspires you about animals in the wild? Why do you appreciate farm animals? If you know anyone who can benefit from the information provided by our guests today, please share this webcast with them. Steve, we're seeing more pet-inclusive workplaces. How can pet-friendly policies benefit a company's culture? And what are the benefits to the companies? And I suppose, Mary, I feel like you would have some really good insight on that as well.
Sure. Well, so we know that those service animals help veterans get back to work and continue to go to work. So that's one of the benefits of those service animals for our veterans. We actually did a pre-pandemic survey of pets in the workplace. And what we found was that, first of all, employees that were able to bring pets into the workplace felt more connected to their boss and their coworkers. They were more committed to their company's mission. They were more likely to stay in their job because they liked it more. So there are real benefits to the workplace in terms of people feeling better about a company that lets them bring their animals with them. And then in the workplace, we found that people were more likely to be collaborative and cooperative with each other and work together. So there's real benefits to having pets in the workplace. And I'll say during the pandemic, when all of us are in our homes, what's the bright spot? That we're with our pets, that we're able to work from home. I say if we're able to work from home, it's the pets that have made us like it during this really difficult time. So my prediction when all of this is over, and also because we have good science to support it, is that we're going to want to take our pets with us. So I think even when we all start to go back to the office, the pets are going to come with us, or we're going to ask to work from home more because we've really enjoyed their company. And in fact, they've made us more productive.
Yeah, Steve, you're absolutely right. And I'd like to jump in here because, there is no greater gift than to have an animal in your life and to have that relationship, right? That's the bond that we talk about. But there's also a problem with folks wanting to take their pet out into public and take them into the restaurants and to the grocery stores. And so, I hate using the phrase, but the fake service dog, and so many things are available online where they can get the papers. There's no such thing as a national registry. So as we talk about this and the benefits, we also have to realize that sometimes our actions can have really bad ramifications on those that have a need for a true service dog, that it's helping them with the medical condition. Because, we've worked with several companies to create policies to allow them to have their employees bring in their animals to work. And I think that's great. I mean, it makes everybody smile. It makes the atmosphere lighter. You get more conversation. They're more productive, right? Because they have to take a break to take the dog out to go to the restroom. So they're getting some fresh air. They're stretching their legs. It brings laughter. All of those great benefits that come in and with the workplace. But at the same time, we have to be responsible pet owners. I would never, for example, take my pet dog out into a place where she wasn't allowed as a service dog. So the Home Depots, the Lowe's, the hardware stores, the pet stores, that's great. That's places where pets are allowed, right? But not the restaurant, right? Not the grocery store. And I think that just comes back to kind of bringing that human-animal bond into ourselves and realizing that just as that animal wants to take care of us, we need to also take care of others and be respectful.
Pam, I'm so glad you said that and spoken like a true trainer, right? We really have to put the time in and understand our pets' behavior and make sure that they are well trained for the environment that they're in. I find that pet owners are not always good at recognizing signs of stress in their animals. And so not all animals are going to enjoy going to the office or going out in public. So it's really important to sort of tune in on your animal and understand its behaviors. And if you're going to bring it someplace, make sure it's not stressed and make sure it's trained to exhibit proper behavior when it's out there interacting with other people and other animals.
No, absolutely. We participated in a study out of France by a veterinarian student who was studying the stress in service dogs. And it was really amazing results because just as our clients get stressed and are triggered by certain things, the dog alerts. And as it's alerting, it becomes stressed because it really, really wants to help. The minute that the handler acknowledges that there's something wrong with them and interacts with the dog, the stress level in the dog dissipated. It was gone because the dog was able to do its job.
We actually funded a pretty large study that looked at the therapy dogs that were visiting pediatric cancer patients. And so not only did the study measure how the dogs helped the kids in the hospital, but we looked at the stress levels in the dogs because if we're going to put them in these situations, we got to make sure they're okay too. And so we measured dog behavior and cortisol, and we found out that at least when they're visiting kids in the hospital, the dogs, as long as they're not there for too long a period of time, the dogs actually do okay. So it's important to look at both sides of the leash when we're thinking about these issues.
And hence why we say 4 paws, 2 feet, 1 team.
My whole heart. Oh my goodness. Again, another question for both of you, really. This human-animal bond seems to have grown even stronger during the pandemic as people, start to spend more time with their pets. And with the pandemic and pet adoptions going way up, how are human and animal interactions helping veterans and others get through this difficult and isolating time? Because the pandemic this year has just flipped everything upside down.
Well, so there's actually been some during the pandemic surveys that have been done. And so people are saying they're spending more time with their pets during social distancing. And they're also saying that they are noticing more about their pets' behavior and their pets' health. So in a way, it's been good for the pets because you notice what's happening with them and you're more likely to take them to the veterinarian, right? They're not at home all day without you. So you're seeing the veterinarians busier than ever, right? And the pets are being extremely well cared for. And people are reporting it's helping them with loneliness. It's helping them with stress. It's helping them with depression. So, well, we've had studies to show that pets help with these things for many years. I think more people are just having the direct experience during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We pull our dogs from shelters and rescues, right? And I think it was about April or May. Shelters and rescues didn't have any dogs, didn't have any cats. They were empty. And my wish is that all these people that went out and adopted these animals continue to have those animals after the pandemic is over. Because they do add so much, right? They bring us joy in so many different ways that we need to recognize that and honor it.
Wow. I think with my last question for both of you, I know, Mary, on your social media, you ask people to share something that made them smile recently. What has made you smile recently?
Oh my goodness, where do I start? There are so many things that have made me smile. My life is blessed every day when I get to see our clients move forward, to change, to have hope for the future. And when I hear stories of families that were on the verge of divorce, but the dog, came into the life as a service dog and the communication started. And so they started working on the issues that they were having and moved forward. But, to put it something simple, this morning as I was getting ready to come into work, my dog Nyla, there's no such thing as going to the bathroom by myself, right? They're in there. And, so I was thinking about how today would go and things that I had to do. And so lo and behold, I'm brushing my teeth and she comes up and she puts her head between my legs. And I look down and she just looks up with this big smile. And how can you not smile back, right? So I smile all the time. We want to celebrate triumphs, big and small. We tell our clients the little triumphs add to big ones, and that's what keeps us moving forward.
That's wonderful. Steve?
Oh, that's easy. I'm feeling inspired today because I got to meet Mary and hear her story. We do the scientific research, which is one step removed from what's going on out there every day. So when I hear what Mary's doing and how it's making a difference, it makes me understand how much I'm making a difference. And so I'm feeling inspired that I got to be part of this conversation and meet Mary today.
My goodness. I am just so glad that I got to talk with both of you today. You've taught me so much. And that makes me so happy because now I get to start a conversation with my friends about it. And I get to back it up with all these things that I've learned today. So thank you both for speaking with me and taking the time today. To our viewers, thank you so much too. You can post questions on onemind.org/brainwaves. To learn more or to find out about how to get involved, visit www.habri.org. That's HABRI.org and OperationFreedomPaws.org. To you two, you're wonderful. Thanks for helping us change the world and make it better for those who are out there and who are struggling, who don't have a voice. You are those people for them. And I think everybody listening can agree with that.
Well, thank you for having us. And Steve, it was an honor to meet you. I'd love to collaborate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's get that conversation started. Thanks for having us.
Most of the time, I just want to lay in bed. I don't want to talk to people.
Mental illness is the world's leading cause of disability. And right now, our mental health is being put to the test. Who is leading the discoveries to provide quality mental health care from the lab to the front lines? We are One Mind, accelerating brain health for all. Help us fund new treatments at onemind.org.